Greetings, Clausewitz here. So in this video I want to talk about pikes in a more detailed way, also share my thoughts on them I had and explain some stuff and questioning some stuff maybe. But the point is about pikes, and I mentioned them a lot in my last videos, and it should be clear by now that they played a huge role in the Swiss formation and also later on at the Landsknecht formation or the Spanish Tercio, and even throughout the 30 Years' War they had a big role in the different kinds of formations, and basically when they are a long time around. And also in the classical period, like best example, the Macedonian phalanx basically were doesn't necessarily the first people using this, and this is not so important who was the first, but the thing is it was a concept actually long time known and then overcome by other tactics, not necessarily because they didn't use pikes, and it was then reused or reinvented. It's not such a huge deal to use pikes actually. I mean, they had spears all the time, or different kinds of spears. So first of all, what is a pike basically? And when I mentioned this, the funny thing is a pike is basically just a spear which is not suitable for throwing anymore. So this is like a very simple way to seeing this. And you can say a pike is a melee spear in quotes. So basically a spear is also just a polearm made for stabbing and throwing. This is basically it. And then you have javelins, which is specialized on throwing. It's not like you can't use a spear or javelin in melee anymore, and it's not so that a more melee spear you can't throw anymore. It's also not true. But of course you have some ranges, and some javelins were so light and so thin that actually not also so short in comparison, that it wouldn't make sense to use them melee so much if you have an alternatives like bigger spears or swords, bigger stuff like this. And also they were not so suitable, not so durable like for the stress in melee combat, so they could break easy and everything. And this was sometimes even intended, like the Roman pilum. Not so much that you can't use it anymore. There were different types of pilum in melee, you can't use it anymore in melee, but the point is, this is like the area I'm talking about. You had like spears, which is basically good for both things. A pike is good for melee, and a javelin is good for throwing. This is like the area we're talking about. And the lance, by the way, is basically a pike, but for a horseman. It's not that a lance is very special. I mean, you had this very famous knight lance, which is really designed to tuck it under your arm and everything. You all know this thing, and it was developed because like lances played a huge role in this. But like from the term, a lance is basically just a pike, because you can't throw it anymore, for a horseman. Basically the same thing. Often actually they wear the same thing. I mentioned this in my Macedonian army videos, where basically the sarissa, which was the pike for the infantry, was basically the lance also for the light cavalry, which also used lance. I can't remember actually how they were called, but they actually were called after this weapon. And also the companions probably used the sarissa, or maybe something a little bit shorter. But yeah, you see those terms and what they actually mean. It's a little bit tricky maybe, because often people use them interchangeable. And I think actually the word lance come from the Latin word lancea or so, which also just means spear or pike or stuff like this, maybe even just something like a spear. And medieval authors, writers actually used this word to describe the weapon of knights, because it was basically more noble, and the spear was basically for the peasants, for the commoners, and the lance was for the knight, even though it was basically the same weapon. And yeah, the typical knight lance was not all the way around. Knights actually used just like spear kind of lances. I think I get a little bit confusing here, but I hope you get the picture. And the thing is, when it's about pikes and about pikes basically, this is the point. They often were very long. This is the reason why you couldn't throw them anymore. They were so long, and heavy in comparison, you could just take them and throw. And even if you would manage it from the weight, then it would be probably just fall with the tip to the ground, because it was so long, and you would hold it here and it would just go down. Probably. This is also, like I said, it's not that you can't throw a pike, like, period. It's even possible to throw it for like 1-2 meters maybe. But in comparison to a spear or a javelin, it's really not worth it. So also a funny thing about the pike is that those pikes, which were like 5 or 6 meters long, is basically a more defensive weapon. And I don't say that it can't be used offensive. It's not like, oh, it's just defensive. But it's pretty similar to shields. I mean, we had different kinds of shields, very similar like different kinds of pikes or different kinds of spears. And the point is that a shield basically, if you make it bigger, a very big shield which basically covers all your body, is a very protective shield, of course. And this is something you wouldn't really use for offensive moves. Not that it's impossible, you can smash the people with it to some degree, but it's like really use it more for really covering behind it, and also or to block something which comes to you. And the smaller you make the shield, the more versatile it gets. And basically when you have a shield which is not so good in protecting anymore, basically a buckler, comparison to like something like a scrotum. I mean, really a scrotum, I can just hold it in front of me and this will protect me. Arrows and spear thrusts and everything, maybe it starts shifting to one side or so, but I could even stop this from happening with my other hand, even I have a sword or a spear in it. And basically nothing can get through it, most times. And if you have a buckler, I would just hold the buckler, so much of my body is not covered, I have to adjust the buckler all the time. This is not such a good defensive compared to this big shield. But the buckler is much more usable for offensive moves, or for offensive moves out of a defensive move. Basically when you parry or blocking something with the buckler and then smashing it, or even because it's so small and light in comparison, you can even redirect more easily blows and attacks, and basically all the time. This is also what the buckler was actually for and used. And this is where the same thing basically with pikes. If you have a very long pike, this is nothing anymore where you could say you could parry anything. I mean, to parry with the spear is even basically harder to do than with other weapons. But of course, if you have this very long pike, you have to hold it with both hands, even it's so long. You can't really react so quickly to everything, and you kind of hindered by your own positioning to the both hand stuff and so. And also you can't just attack everywhere. I mean, if we have a normal spear, then you could of course easily attack like from above and or from sides and everything. Not with the pike, you can't just start the pike from above. To some degree of course, but not in the same way. You're just limited more than with the other one. But at the same time, because it's so long, you're basically outreaching somebody and putting something to stop him, so an obstacle in his way. And so he can't really get to you, because if you hold this pike and with your whole body and somebody, even if you wouldn't thrust or hurt or endanger him to get hurt, he would just be standing there. He can't push through the pike. He had to push the pike basically through your hands, so that it glides through your hands. Then he could enclose. Or to break the pike is also pretty hard, because it's very thick, hard wood, and basically hardwood to cut through it. It's pretty hard, especially when it can move. So this is what I mean. It's a very huge obstacle. You basically also need something as long or longer as the pike to actually then hitting somebody, but then you also limit it again. And this is what I mean. It is more suited for defensive actions. And really when you see a big shield, and actually it's also not so so unusual, because actually in barricades and fortifications you put shields on positions to cover area so that like missiles wouldn't get you, but you also would use spikes or something similar to really put obstacles in the way. Not necessarily just to stop something like tanks or cavalry, but also to stop men or a certain amount of men, to really like force the enemy to go specific ways in a specific amount of people, and therefore getting an advantage and basically higher defense. And this is the same with the pike. And now you see also when you put multiple men, pikemen, in a big formation, then of course they can't be outflanked as an individual anymore. So even if I have, like I said, also a pike in the hand of one man, it's not so ideal, because you are limited. Same way if you have a very big shield, you are limited, because the shield for itself is heavy. You can't react to everything around you with the shield, and you can't even maybe, because the shield is so big, just cover sides of you, while with a lighter round shield, a smaller round shield, or a buckler, you can actually protect your sides very easily in comparison. And basically to like, this is also same with the shield, to really counter this, how you are so limited in your movements in the area which can you affect. Just put more men and the men themselves protect them. So really have those big formation of pikes, and maybe put different troops on their sides to really protect them from outflanking. Same with the shield, you put many men in a dense formation with this big shield, and it's all well good protected. It's really like a personal fortification, or a fortification for the formation. And this is also how we see how they use this. And that you really can ensure stuff like cavalry charges can't get to you, because you basically pay the horse before he can get to you, and also the whole charge thing, or the whole speed of the horse actually makes it easy, very dangerous for the rider also just to fall off because the horse gets impaled, or the horse actually maybe don't want to charge in it anymore. Depends on the horse, on the training and stuff like this. But this is also a thing you can actually handle, that makes it difficult, or more difficult for your enemy. And because the formation is also very deep, even the impact of like horses or other men don't push people aside, because basically behind me is standing somebody and my body gets pressed against him, and this is all losing pressure, because pressure is just force to the area. And so basically, because there's such a large area of man where the force is applied to, the pressure is very low, and therefore you can't just push through them, can't push the pikes away. And you have also this very kind of dense wall of pikes, which all of them can actually. This is also a good thing, because you have this mass of man, this big force behind those straws basically, and even if there's like enemies come, some of them will get catch from different pikes, but they all have more force behind them than actually just one man. Therefore you can stop them. And this is the funny thing about it, even if the pike wouldn't be sharp, and so you even can charge in and get impaled, because actually this is pretty easy to handle because of the limitations in melee of the pike. You can really put big shields or armor just around you to protect you from this. So basically it was maybe a bit harder in ancient times when armor was not so widely around and they used bigger shields, but maybe it depends on the shields. A very cheap and light shield, maybe it bends or actually breaks at some point. But for example at night, when we look at the Swiss formation again, which is basically in full plate armor, not all the time of course, not all nights, but we had those nights. They basically were not threatened by the pike. Maybe some unlucky dude, like 1 out of 10,000, where the pike could actually stab through the visor, or he had his visor open, or was not closing it fast enough, or had some opening, and it was really bad luck. But in most of the cases, the knight were fine. But actually, what happens? I mean, the pike is sharp and everything; it bites in your arm, and there are multiple of them. This is what I mean. You basically get stabbed to the sheer force. You can't move forward, you can't attack the enemy which is like 5 meters away from you. Even if you get through some of them, then there's another row of them. And of course they can thrust to some degree. This is not always possible, but the beautiful thing, like from a military perspective on this, is even if the people will just stand still with their pikes, no thrusting, no moving, just standing there holding it and be steadfast. Steadfast, you know. They are blocking the enemy already. And this increased the defensiveness, the defense is the word, of the whole formation. And then you of course need something for the killing power. But a pike, because it's so simple, it's like it's just spear, of course this needs some craftsmanship, but not so much as other weapons. It's very easy to like equip thousands of men with it. And like I said, it doesn't even need to be really sharp for this whole thing. Or you could actually use materials which are not so good quality, not so well suited for being stabby as steel. And therefore you have an effective defense. Doesn't mean you win. You need of course killing power. This is what I described in my other videos about this. And the Macedonians had it, and the Swiss had it. The only difference is the Swiss and later other ones like the Landsknechts and the Tercio basically integrated the killing power inside this infantry pike formation, while the Macedonians actually had killing power aside from the formation. And this is the funny thing about pikes basically. Doesn't mean that the pike can't be used in an offensive way. This is the thing, you can use the pike also to push people back. Like I said, the sheer force can push the whole formation of the enemy back, can interrupt the formation, and can even form gaps in the formation. I mean, if you have all these different pikes and people react differently to them, some get holded back, some get through, you kinda scatter them at the front. You have to imagine you have those two sides, and people kinda get scattered here, which makes it basically easier for people with halberds or so to finish them off. Or because people are, like I said with the fortifications, are forced to come with a certain amount of people at a certain time through the pikes, which is here the fortification, it's easier even the knight to then finish them off, because you have all those pikes and even some halberds which are shorter, but the enemies come in a loose way close to you, and then you can easily finish them off, you can concentrate on them more. And basically, if it's really need be, the pirate could drop his pike, or you throw it, kind of push at an enemy by dropping it, so it's maybe more an obstacle, and use shorter weapons. And because they both know this short environment, the knight can't use just his mobility anymore, or his advanced training so well anymore. He is also limited. And also because pikes are around him, this is what I mean with the corridor. He can't just then go around something and outflank a certain individual, because there are pikes in the way. And it can even happen that the pikes would push and like not pull but push at him. But there are also other weapons you can actually pull at the knight, basically the halberd as well, but other things besides the halberd. And so this is actually the very simple and effective thing to give your troops. And yeah, it's pretty easy. And actually knights also used a similar fashion. They used their lances just for on foot. Maybe they had even two kinds of lances, one for the horse at a certain point and one for the infantry. There is some mentionings, like in the Battle of Agincourt, that the English knights actually like shortened their lances, because then for the close quarter combat they were expecting or so, they could them using more effectively or so. And so this is like the hint, they actually had normal lances for the horses, then they used them on foot, and later on they used those more specialized lances. Or even this really when they want to charge. Depends on the situation. Maybe I talk about this in more detail. Never really thought about it so often. And because the pike is so simple in defending the formation, it's not invulnerable. It's not like the flanks are no problem or so. Actually, the pike formation is harder to maneuver and harder to change directions. This is the reason why actually like the Swiss or the Landsknecht like invented or used this eagle formation, which is just eagle in the sense of this German word eagle, which is hedgehog, which they just form the circle of pikes when really they were in danger or were in danger to be outflanked. You see this later on also with muskets when they had those square formations. And yeah, I hope you liked this video, and if so, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you not already did. I talk about military stuff in here, and hopefully see you soon.